So I found what's wrong with the headlight bracket not fitting our replacement headlight brackets. What's happened is this new piece actually has a kink in it, and this end is actually closer to the wheel than it should be. So what we're going to do is simply pull it out.
My goodness, what an idea. Why didn't I think of that?
Well, you're going to have, that's what I was saying to you, Dad. This rope, you're going to have to come at an angle like that to keep that parallel with the van, because it's going to slide across that way if you don't. After my dad listened to my advanced rope mechanics lecture, he decided to get a clamp anyway.
Oh, you moved half an inch. Moved half an inch. Moved half an inch. That'll do, stop now, because we've gone over.
Next, I reattached the upper slam panel. You can see how bent and twisted it is with the amount of force and prying it required to get the screws to actually just go in. You can see with the new latch upper piece on the bonnet that it is now outside of the latching area, and it's even worse than the old one. To fix this latch issue, I've actually got the old latch back on there, and you can see how bent it is that way. But it is actually bent in the right direction for it to engage properly with the other part of the lock. The right side of it does not get in the way. It actually shuts pretty well with the original latch on there, but I think I might just need to adjust the latch to make it shorter, because it is engaging exactly where I want it to engage in the middle of the latch. But we can see the bonnet is still slightly high compared to the wing, especially at the front part. So that may help the depth of engagement. So that corner gap's a little bit bare now. It's still slightly out though, but I think most things on this front end are slightly twisted. So that is not really a concern right now. But we have got the bonnet to latch properly, and we've got it to unlatch properly. So that means that this bonnet is now fully functional again. So next to go in is the air diverter or air separator. Now this was not a cheap part, it was £63 for this plastic / rubbery component, but I want this done right on the mechanical side of things. This can be considered important for cooling. But what I have done is I totally forgot to put this in before I put the upper slam panel on, so it's going to be a bit of a struggle trying to slot it in. Let's do it. There is absolutely no way I'm going to get this in without taking the front slam panel off again. It's just so far back there, and there's all the clips which need to be connected. So I think that goes in first, and then put the slam panel on. So now we can properly see where all of these little plastic clips go, and they are right in the back of the radiator there. So I'm glad I took this off and I didn't keep trying to fiddle with it to get it in. Next we have these top radiator clips, and there's another part I forgot to put in before I just spent loads of time putting this panel back on. But this should just about squeeze through this gap here and slot into the top of the radiator plastic in there, and then this goes on top, goes into this, and it holds the radiator in place. And that should click on there. And then this should click in and hold the radiator in place. So that is the upper slam panel on, and the cooling system is now absolutely not going anywhere as compared to the shaky radiator we had when we first got this car. I am also thinking about just treating this rust on here where the wood screws into the bumper just before this gets any worse with it being on the road. That is now pretty much straight. And next stage is to use the Dremel, grind out this rust, and then respray it. Right, I have the rust cleaned up on all the holes now. It's looking much better. Next stage, I'm going to sand it down with some 40 grit sandpaper, just getting final rust out and to rough the surface up, ready for priming and painting. On this side there's a little bit more damage around the wing's edge, so I think it might be worth me just sanding back all of this edge just to make sure that even though it is galvanized underneath, that galvanic coating doesn't get eaten up over time, and it is protected by paint as well. And then of course there are 2 extra holes that need to be painted as well. Okay, having now actually found the correct colour, we're going to give this another go, and hopefully the metallic blue gives it a good base coat for it to come out on. With the headlights, obviously we have one new one and one pre-loved headlight, and this has a few holes in it from when they've put wood screws into it or the fittings have snapped off underneath. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some sealant and adhesive to fill in the holes, and then to also support this bracket which is missing the 2 supporting screw holes. The next job is the final major structural job, and that is some bracing bars that goes from here to the bolt up there, and then one more that goes from here to the middle, and that's the same for both sides. So Mercedes were charging around £15 per bar, so we thought we'd just get some lengths of steel and manufacture them ourselves. Now the next repair is actually something I broke on the car. It is an air conditioning sensor plug which snapped off when I was wrestling the radiator into the car because it was a very tight space. Really, I should have disconnected the plug or disconnected the air conditioning condenser at the front, but luckily this wasn't a bodge job. The wires soldered very nicely onto the original plugs and all snapped back into place. So we finally found the brackets that go at the bottom of the bumper, but we are missing something to attach them to, which we did not realise in the beginning. You can see where the damage is. It's actually sheared out, but there should be a bolt plug kind of pressed in there. They don't make these separately. It would be a whole new set of frame rails, so what I'm going to do is try and make my own. I'm welding a strip of metal which fits exactly inside of it to stop it from rotating when you tighten up a bolt to it, and hopefully this will be enough to hold the bumper in place. Bearing in mind it didn't have anything there.
This
when we
side
got the car.
actually looks okay. You see we've got good penetration on two sides of the bolt as well as the plate. On this side it looks absolutely disgusting. So yeah, welding skills still definitely need work. But let's see if it'll actually fit. I have my new backing plates all welded up and painted, so these should last a while and not rust. Now they can be installed with the bumper brackets, and then we're almost ready for the bumper to go back on. This car was also missing its air resonator. Now the air resonator sits just in front of the belts, and it actually takes air through these tubes, and its purpose is to prevent the turbulence, and that's the swirly airflow from getting into the engine, and it smooths it out a little bit, and that results in more performance from the engine. The secondary function of it is to actually make the engine a little bit quieter. So this definitely is an essential part which was missing off our car. On the resonator there are 2 pins here and here and 2 holes here and here, which go into the hole here, pin here, pin here. And now it's time to put the final bits on top. So, we are nearly at the end of this absolute nightmare of a car. It's been through so many accidents, maybe 2 or 3, that it's just had so many parts missing from it. Now, this is the final thing that needs to be fixed. This silicone hose with this sensor on it is in charge of activating the safety systems. So, effectively there's an explosive charge in the bonnet, which explodes, lifts the bonnet up and protects the people inside the car and any pedestrians that you may have hit. So when something or somebody impacts with the bumper, this tube will be squeezed and this sensor will be alerted that there has been an accident. Currently, this tube is too short for this bumper. So I got some nice new silicone tubing, and this is finally going to make this system safe and working. See, they wanted, I think it was around 30 to 40 pounds for a new one of these sensors, but our sensors are perfectly fine, and it's just the tubing that was needed.
the temperature sensor was also missing off this car, so we've actually just bought a new one on eBay with the connector for, I think it was around £12, and we've just soldered the joints together and shrink wrapped them. And that temperature sensor actually sits in this little hole in the bumper. And then once it's all together, it actually sits right here on the bumper. And then the final job before it goes back on, this little sensor has actually come a bit loose out of its housing. So I'm just going to put a dab of silicone on there to keep that sealed in. Thank you so much for watching this video and making it all the way to the end. If you've enjoyed it, drop a like, subscribe and comment. The next video will be the final video in this co-park car series, and we will evaluate whether this car was a good financial decision. A full breakdown of all the costs of this car. And there will be some more SLK content coming very, very soon.